Sarah stood by the window, watching the rain trace delicate patterns down the glass. The world outside seemed quiet, soft, almost gentle, but inside her heart, everything felt heavy. She wrapped her hands around a warm cup of tea, hoping this steam would calm the restlessness that had been building for weeks. She remembered the early days of her marriage, how Daniel's laughter had filled the room like sunlight. Back then, life had seemed simple, full of promise. They had dreamed together, shared endless conversations, and created a love that felt unshakable. But lately, something had shifted. The quiet wasn't peaceful, it was loud. The space between them had grown so slowly that she hadn't noticed it at first, but now it felt almost impossible to ignore. He smiled, yes, but it wasn't the same smile that used to make her heart skip a beat. It was polite, measured, careful, as though he were hiding a part of himself behind it. Sarah sipped her tea and tried to convince herself she was imagining things. Maybe work had been stressful for him. Maybe everyone went through phases like this. Yet the feeling in her chest told her otherwise, and unshakable. Persistent worry that something was wrong. The little things had started piling up, each one whispering the same question. What is he hiding? A week ago, she had noticed his phone lighting up more often, buzzing with messages he quickly slipped out of sight. She had asked him about it once, and he laughed it off, saying, "Just work stuff, nothing to worry about." But that laugh hadn't reached his eyes, and Sarah knew eyes never lie. Tonight, the air felt heavier than usual. Daniel was downstairs humming a tune Sarah didn't recognize, and she realized she didn't even know what kind of day he had had. They had once shared everything, every small detail, every triumph, every worry, but now she felt like a stranger in the same house. Her loneliness wasn't loud. It didn't shout. It crept in quietly in the space between their conversations, in the softness of an empty chair across from her, in the way his absence felt present even when he was sitting right there. Yet even in that quiet ache, a small part of her hoped that he would notice the change, that he would reach for her hand like he used to, that he would speak honestly and not leave her wondering as she stared out the window. Sarah thought about the life they had built. Years of love, laughter, and shared dreams. Could that all be in danger because of something she couldn't see yet? The thought was terrifying, but she couldn't turn away. Her tea had gone cold, forgotten on the windowsill when she saw him walk past. Daniel's smile met hers for a brief moment, soft but distant, and Sarah felt a pang she couldn't describe. She wanted to reach for him, to bridge the gap, to find the warmth they had lost, but she hesitated, unsure if she would be met with truth or silence. The rain outside fell harder, each drop echoing the uncertainty in her heart. She realized that tonight might change everything. Something unspoken lingered in the air, and though she couldn't name it yet, she knew it would not leave until it was faced. Sarah took a deep breath, setting her cup down. She didn't know what the night would bring, whether it would be a conversation that healed, a revelation that broke her heart, or a silence that stretched longer than she could bear. But she knew one thing. She could no longer pretend that everything was fine. The quiet between them had grown too loud, and tonight she would either find the truth or lose the fragile hope she had been clinging to for so long. As Sarah sat on the porch the next morning, wrapped in a soft blanket against the cool breeze, her mind wandered back to the early days of their relationship. She remembered the first time she and Daniel had met at a coffee shop on a rainy afternoon. He had smiled awkwardly, holding his umbrella like a shield, and somehow that smile had made her feel safe in a world that often felt uncertain. From that moment on, their lives had intertwined in ways neither could have predicted. They had spent weekends exploring quiet trails, mornings cooking breakfast together, and evenings sitting on this very porch talking about their dreams as the sun sank low. Sarah could still hear the sound of his laughter echoing in her memory, a sound that had once filled her heart with light and warmth. She remembered their first apartment, small and cramped, but full of life. Every corner held a story, pictures pinned to the wall, notes left on the fridge, silly little arguments over who made the better pancakes. They had built a world together, piece by piece, each memory a brick in the foundation of their love. And yet, despite all that closeness, there had always been a quiet distance neither had fully acknowledged. It was subtle at first, a forgotten phone call here, a hurried excuse there. They had brushed it off, thinking it was just the busy pace of life. But over time, those tiny cracks had grown, unnoticed until the gaps between them were impossible to ignore. Sarah sighed and closed her eyes, letting the memories wash over her. She thought of the evenings when Daniel had held her hand through storms, both literal and metaphorical. She remembered the comfort of his presence when she had faced difficult days at work, and the way he had celebrated her successes as if they were his own. Those moments were etched into her heart, proof of the bond they had built. Yet, in those same memories, she could also feel the subtle hints of what had kept them apart. Small misunderstandings left unspoken, moments of worry disguised as busyness, and a quiet fear of vulnerability that had slowly grown over the years. Both had wanted to protect themselves and each other, but in doing so, they had built walls that neither had noticed until now. Sarah opened her eyes and glanced toward the street, where a neighbor's children played in puddles, laughing freely. A bittersweet feeling settled over her. She realized that love was never just about perfect moments or laughter. It was also about navigating the imperfections, the gaps, and the times when hearts drifted slightly apart. She thought about Daniel's smile last night, the one that had felt distant, yet still familiar. How could someone who had once been so present now feel like a stranger? And yet, when she remembered the way he had always looked at her during quiet moments, there was a longing she couldn't deny. Sarah realized that beneath her worry and hurt, she still wanted to reach for him, to reconnect, to rebuild what had been lost. Their love had been strong once, resilient and tender. And perhaps it could be again, but only if they faced the truths they had avoided for so long. The sun rose higher, spilling warm light across the porch, and Sarah felt a mixture of hope and fear. She remembered how Daniel had once promised that no matter what happened, they would always find a way through together. Those words had been more than just comfort, they had been a foundation, to quiet promise that lingered even now. And in that moment, Sarah knew she couldn't turn away from the reality of their distance. To rebuild, she would need to remember not just the pain, but the love, the laughter, the shared dreams, and the quiet moments that had once made their life together so full. With a deep breath, she rose from the porch swing, feeling both the weight of the past and the faint pull of hope. The journey ahead would not be easy, but it had always begun with remembering what had made them strong and daring to imagine it again. Word count 600. Focus, nostalgia, emotional depth, past memories, romantic bond, longing. YouTube safe, clean, emotional, relatable. No sexual or policy-violating content. It was a quiet Saturday morning when Sarah found herself wandering through the small farmers market downtown. The air smelled of fresh bread and blooming flowers, and the soft hum of conversation wrapped around her like a comforting blanket. She hadn't planned to come here, but something in her chest had tugged her toward a mix of longing and curiosity. A silent hope she wasn't ready to name. As she turned a corner, she froze. There, near a stall of colorful sunflowers, stood Daniel. He was examining a bouquet, his brow slightly furrowed as he weighed which flowers to choose. When he looked up, their eyes met, and for a moment, everything else, the market, the sounds, rain from the previous days, faded into the background. Sarah felt her heart skip. The memory of all the moments they had shared, the laughter and quiet talks on their porch, rushed back in a wave. For a second, she saw the Daniel she had fallen in love with, not the distant, distracted man of recent months, but the one who had once made her feel seen, safe, and cherished. Daniel noticed her hesitation, then offered a small, tentative smile. "Sarah," he said softly, as though speaking her name out loud could bridge the distance that had grown between them. She nodded, unable to find words at first. There was tension, yes, but also a strange warmth of recognition that, despite the silence and mistakes, something unbroken still remained. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said finally, her voice trembling slightly. "I wasn't expecting to run into you either," he he replied. "But maybe it's good that we did." They began walking together through the market, side by side, the easy rhythm of old habits slowly returning. Conversations started hesitantly about the flowers, the weather, small things they had always shared, but beneath the ordinary words. A deeper connection was stirring. Sarah realized how much she had missed the quiet companionship. The way a shared smile could feel like home. Daniel, too, seemed different somehow, present, thoughtful, and aware of the mistakes that had caused distance between them. There was a gentleness in his gestures, a sincerity in his eyes, that hinted at a man willing to try again. At one point, they stopped near a stall selling honey and preserves. Sarah laughed softly when Daniel accidentally knocked over a jar, and he caught it just in time. The sound of her laughter filled the space between them, reminding them both of the joy that had once been effortless. "You still have the same laugh," Daniel said quietly, almost to himself. "And you still notice everything," Sarah replied with a small smile. It was a simple exchange, but it carried the weight of months of longing, reflection, and unspoken apologies. In that moment, the past and present collided, and Sarah felt the fragile beginnings of trust and hope stir in her heart as the morning sun rose higher. Spilling golden light across the market, they paused near the exit. Neither spoke immediately, but both understood something important. This encounter wasn't just coincidence. It was a chance, a small, unexpected opportunity to reconnect, to rebuild what had been broken with care and honesty. Daniel reached out gently, brushing a stray strand of hair from Sarah's face, and for the first time in weeks she let herself meet his gaze without fear. "I know I hurt you," he said softly, "and I don't expect everything to go back to the way it was, but I want to try to really be here with you." Sarah nodded, her eyes glistening, feeling both the weight of the past and the possibility of the future. "I don't know what will happen," she admitted, "but I'm willing to see if we can find our way back." And as they walked away from the market together, side by side, the warmth between them began to return, not the naive certainty of before, but a more profound, mature understanding. Love, they realized, wasn't about never falling apart. It was about choosing again and again, to meet each other halfway, to rebuild with patience, honesty, and hope. And in that quiet morning, under the soft sunlight and the hum of a waking town, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, the possibility of love renewed, fragile but real, waiting to grow stronger with each step they took together.